Oh, hey, welcome to another edition. Socrates explains everything. My name is Socrates. I still like to explain things from time to time. So, Ukraine being invaded by Russia. How's it going? Not quite a year, but we're getting close to it since Russia invaded Ukraine, a neighboring peaceful state, in a naked act of aggression. It was supposed to be a 3-day war. It's crossed over 300 days so far, and it's not really going good for anybody. A lot of dead people who should be alive, a lot of destroyed land that should be healthy, and there's a lot of people going hungry around the world who should be eating both Russian and Ukrainian grains. So Vladimir Putin's, he's made a pretty big mistake. Let's be fair, he won this gamble multiple times. In 2014, they invaded the Donbass, Luhansk, and took Crimea, and nobody said a thing. It's amazing how often Yes Minister, a TV show from the 80s, is absolutely accurate. He was described as, how would Russia invade the West? They would use salami tactics, one slice at a time, not big enough to raise reaction, but still a piece at a time until eventually get a lot. And that's exactly what they did. They took a slice at a time until they tried to take all of Kyiv. But at this point, the war is ground to a halt within reason, although Ukraine is slowly pushing back. And Russia is under an incredible amount of sanctions. They've lost about 1 million men who have left the country. They've lost about 1 million more who have either been killed or dispersed. And at this point, the sanctions are starting to bite. One of the interesting things about capitalism, one of my complaints about capitalism, actually makes the sanctions work effective, which is that no company can make anything. Every company relies on countless numbers of companies. If you want to make something, you need minerals. Well, to get minerals, you need to mine them. And now you're talking even on a small scale. Sledgehammer at the very least? It's not effective. You can't use a hammer. You need drills and things. Right there, you've got all sorts of other companies, the ones who make all the materials and make the windings for the motors, who make the batteries, who make the cases. It's an incredibly complex web of suppliers. And to me, this is one of the biggest weaknesses of capitalism, is that when one of those suppliers simply can't make it profitable, which is mathematical, they're still making their products, but this artificial number doesn't balance out. They go under, bankrupt, and disappear, and now suddenly you don't have a parts manufacturer for something that might have been critical. Before the war, Ukraine was the world's leading suppliers of wire harnesses for automobiles. Because wire harnesses are very difficult to manufacture, they're not produced in anywhere near enough quantity for any single type to automate it. It takes a relatively highly skilled and underpaid workforce to do this, and Ukraine was the world's producers. There's only but so many Audi 5s of a certain type produced, so they only need a couple thousand or tens of thousands of wire harnesses. And of course, you need a different one for a different thing, and only a human being can adjust to the different conditions that easily. So they've had to change the whole supply chain to get that. At one point, the auto industry was really, really held down. They couldn't produce cars because they did not have wire harnesses or capacity to get them. Now Russia has been cut off from lots and lots of wire harnesses. Transistors, high-tech components, low-tech components. It's very, very difficult to replace that, because to replace a transistor, you need to produce thousands and thousands of different kinds of machines. There's only a few companies that even produce transistors, or the machines that make transistors. Taiwan is the world's leading producer of transistors, and has been for a long time. And with China's ever-present threat about them, the world's trying to produce transistors in other places, because it's a bottleneck that destroys the economies. Capitalism doesn't do well without endless growth. If you don't grow for 2 quarters in a row for 6 months, it's called a recession. You do it a couple more times, you're in a depression. We've only had one depression, because endlessly growing, which is exponential, and mathematically it just doesn't work. But even forgetting the mathematics, it's so fragile. These oil stresses have stressed out the entire world's economy because we allowed a company to raise their prices unchecked. You can see their earnings have skyrocketed. And earnings is the difference between cost and your revenue. And because the cost hasn't gone up, the revenue went up because they had essentially a monopoly and corrupt kleptocracy, organization, cronyism, to act in collusion and raise the prices. So at this point, I'm still amazed how well the whole system holds together. But the truth is, capitalism is, again, it's fake. It's not like it's trees. This is the thing, the environment, that's real. We can't fake environmental things. But capitalism we can fake. So up to the point where it breaks, and then all of a sudden everything sort of grinds to a strange halt. It's strange. So we'll see what happens. That's what I think is going on in Russia right now. I think the Russians are on the back foot. They can't replace everything they've had destroyed. Ukraine has more and more support from the West. The West isn't even sending their best weapons. We're sending the good weapons. But we have much, much better weapons we're not even using, so we're fighting with one hand behind our back. Maybe they're just trying to bleed Russia dry. I can't tell you for sure. They're definitely running out of men. And they've lost a huge amount of equipment that's pretty impossible to get back. So I don't think the nuclear is really an option that we should even worry about, but so much, because if they actually launched nuclear weapons, I think the retaliation would be undescribable. And I'm not convinced the Russian nuclear weapons even work. They stole all the money they were supposed to spend on tires for their trucks. And the one thing you're going to use, not even in war, just in a war exercise, is cargo trucks, because you have to send amazing amounts of supply just to feed the guys. And they stole the money that went into the tire trucks. And those trucks are going to be needing those tires. It will get found out. So if you steal something as obvious as that, it seems to me the nuclear arsenal, less likely they're going to use it. And they started pulling off nuclear warheads and using them for the rockets. So, I don't know. I think Russia has made a massive mistake and continues to make massive mistakes. And peace is easy as long as they leave all of Ukraine and Crimea as well. Anyway, I took a bike ride for the first time and figured I could use what the show says, and I'll explain something if you like it. I got time on my hands. Got back on stage a little bit. That's going to be good too. So come around 11 January, right, to the Feed Cafe on Wilbaustraat. We'll be doing a show there with Ken Parsons. And till then, Happy New Year! Or whenever that was. I'm happy.